whether you are in from our Zoom room or you are in the multiple channels and platforms through social media. Welcome to Indigenous Ways Wisdom Circle. We are thrilled about tonight, but just want to thank you for your time. Before we start this evening, we want to take this time to acknowledge the traditional caretakers and ancestors of the lands that we reside on here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and also wherever you are beaming in from at this moment, to acknowledge the traditional caretakers and ancestors of the lands to which you are residing on, so we could all be here this evening. Indigenous Ways is dedicated to bridging cultural exchange with people globally. If this is your first time here, we are thrilled. We have the Wisdom Circle, which is every Wednesday, 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. And then we also have on Fridays the concert series, same time, same channel, which also gets beamed out. We are thrilled for this evening with our guest of honor who will be blessing us and sharing about rising and resilience. You know, something that's not said a lot is acknowledging the extraordinary teachers, and that's period. But also, particularly in this time with what's going on, and in this country with what's going on. And in saying that, you know, our amazing guest, Zelema Harris, who will be blessing us this evening, spent her adult life in the field of education, with as a high school teacher, doing university administration, and also president and CEO of Community College. She has also been the president of the NAACP chapters in Kansas City and in the Missouri branch. You know, we are so thrilled to have Zelema here. And she has been active and a voice in civil rights, women's rights, the LGBTQIA2 plus rights, labor rights, and also eliminating the stigma of mental illness. Zelema is an amazing, extraordinary woman who continues in this extraordinary walk called life, inspiring others with all the things that she's been doing. So with that, please, let's give it up to Zelema Harris.
Woo! I think I'm coming on.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Let's see.
It's great.
So Zelema, we can see you and you're looking marvelous.
Oh, you can see me? Okay. Thank you very much, Elena. And thanks to you and Tosh for inviting me. And I'm not sure I should thank Narissa, but she does perform on your program. And I want to thank you for utilizing her talent. And I would not be here if she hadn't asked me to do it. So that's why I'm here. But I too have become a fan of your program. And so thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Before I begin answering questions that my daughter Cynthia provided for me, she knows I go on tangents, and she said, Mom, why don't I prepare questions you can answer based on the theme? Rising and Resilience, and I thanked her profusely. In fact, everything we do in the family, it becomes a family affair. My son is the assistant in making sure you could see me, that I had adequate lighting. And so thanks, Jay. Thanks, Narissa, Jay, and Cynthia. Um, Let me say before I begin to discuss my thoughts, I am so outraged. I'm so tired of the shootings, the murders of Black people, that I'm in a constant rage. And yet, nothing is being done to the murderers and those who oppress our people. One of the things that gives me hope, though, the outpouring of support for our cause, from the athletes to all those young people on the streets. I am so proud of them. And I'm seeing more and more people use their national, international platforms to say enough is enough. And so that gives me hope. It gives me a reason for getting up every day saying something great is going to happen. And also, having lived for 8 decades, I know that progress isn't linear, that we step back, we step sideways, and then we move forward. So I am very hopeful that things will change and that the murders will stop, and those people who are causing this hatred will be brought to justice. So I wanted to say that. And one of the things also, to watch the mother of Blake, you know, it just speaks to our love for this country, because our democracy is fledgling. But we know that if we don't fight for what's left of it, we will not have a chance. So I've always believed that Black folk are perhaps the most patriotic people there are, or at least we're at the top of the list. So now to why I'm here. On the topic of rising and resilience, Cynthia posed the question, where did you get your strength? And I guess as a daughter, she can recognize that perhaps more than I can, because I'm quick to be self-effacing when I'm being given some praise, and that's a woman's thing of my generation. But believe me, it never stopped me. I pushed that aside quickly to get done some of the things that I've been able to accomplish with others. So I think as I reflected on that, I realized it was my upbringing. Cynthia always said to me when I would question her about the deluge of millennials coming into the workplace, and I would say, but they don't work hard, they don't do this. And she would say, Mom, not everybody is like you. You're of the earth. You grew up, you're close to the earth. So the way you view the world is so different. All of my children have helped me to grow, and I appreciate it. Um, but growing up, where we appreciated the ebb and flow of life. We lived by McDonald's Farmer's Almanac and the St. James Version of the Bible, and often they intersected, and they were always on the table for references. So we planted and harvested by the position of the moon. And so everything seemed to be predestined. My mom's rearing of us actually came from the zodiac signs. She would read them when we were difficult to deal with, and she would say to me, well, that goat just want to climb, wants to reach the top. That methodical goat, I'm a Capricorn. And she would read and reread to try to help her deal with me. And yeah, I was a difficult child. But a lot of that had to do with the independence that she granted me. My mom, my mom's first husband died when she was 32, 31 or 32, and she had 4 children. The youngest was 8 months, the oldest was 5 years. He was diagnosed with pneumonia and went fast. He was working on a dam in Texas, East Texas, where we lived. And there she was with 4 kids, no means of making a living on a farm, and she had these small children. One was nursing. So my dad heard about her. He was 72, and he came to see her to bring the kids candy and snacks and bring gifts to her. Eventually, they were married. Well, it wasn't eventually because I was born when my dad was 73 and my mother was 33. And I'm sure she never expected to have a kid with a 73-year-old. So I think that's why she gave me such independence. When the others were in school, I was allowed to go out and roam the property, and she would tuck my little dress in the back and tell me to come in when my shadow got in front of me, and that was time to eat and take a nap. And I did that. Someone asked me, what'd you do on the rainy days? Well, that was East Texas. We had sunshine most of the time. And when it was raining, of course, I was inside. So it was a wonderful life. I absolutely loved it. And so giving me that freedom and responsibility, I grew up challenging everything. I played alone, and most of my play was very creative. I twirled and circled the sky. I had funerals all the time and cut wildflowers and used my mom's velvet watch case as the coffin. And thankfully, no psychologist came by to figure out what was wrong with this kid. But the fact is, that was my social life. I only left home to go to funerals or to go to the general store occasionally. So that was my life. And it allowed me to have the self-confidence that I acquired over the years. And I recall when I started school, Texas did not have kindergarten. So when I started school, I could read, write, I knew cursive, I'd read first grade, second grade, I knew my multiplication tables, because early in the morning, my brothers, as they were milking cows, would have me stand on the gate and swing. And I remember my brother saying, well, it's time for her to learn her 5 times tables. So I learned that quickly because that was not as complicated as my 6 times. Um, so anyway, that was my early life. Um, I didn't know much about uh, prejudice, discrimination, oppression, because my total world was Black. All of my teachers were Black, the entire community. And I only saw white people when we would walk down, maybe on a Monday, the sheriff's car, we knew it, on Highway 87, would drive to the bootlegger's home and pick up his cut from the weekend, because we knew that our relative sold bootleg liquor and they gambled there. And the sheriff left them alone because he was able to receive a cut of their profit, and probably much more than that. So that was my early life, full of love. Um, yeah, I always relished the farm and wish I could go back there. Now, my dad was getting old, and my mom wanted us to have some education, training or education, because her mantra was, don't depend on nobody else. And then to the girls, she would say, get a trade, get something. You can't depend on no man. And maybe that's why I'm divorced and not married, because I never ascribed to the women of my generation who were subservient to their husbands and sought permission. I never did that. So anyway, it was my mom, who was a feminist. Um, she did what was considered man's work, and my dad did what was considered woman's work. He cooked, he taught the girls how to cut up chicken. And so it was an unusual kind of family that did not exist except in my home, in our home. So when I was 12, my mom decided that we should leave the farm and go to the city so we could get jobs and get training so we could take care of ourselves. Um, so we moved. My dad was 85. Farming had become a little difficult for him, and we moved. And it was there that it was, it was shocking. The kids, I thought, were far more advanced. I didn't dress appropriately. I remember coming home saying to my mom, they all look like they are going to church. And so my older sister got busy making me things so that I would have appropriate clothing. I began to sew, and I got a job when I was 12 working at the 5 and 10 store. I think it was called Kresge's, downtown Beaumont. And there I learned that there were white people around, and I hadn't been in a situation like that before, except in passing. And I recall the manager asking me to wash windows on a ledge on the second floor. And I was ready to do that. And there was a Black man. And Black men at that time did not stand up to white men. And this was in the 50s. And so the Black man who was a laborer, he cleaned, he did whatever they asked him to do. He told the manager, "Sir, don't do that. She can fall." He said, "That's too dangerous for her." And the white man manager acquiesced and had me to scrub the walls inside as opposed to going out on the ledge. I was supposed to be the inventory clerk, but I was too fast. I got it done quickly. And it was during the holidays, December. And so I learned that, yeah, white people will put your lives in danger. I also learned that I could not eat at the lunch counter in Kresge's. And I recall going down to get a sandwich, a grilled cheese, and I'd never had one. I'd heard about them. And they told me I needed to go around to the side and they would give it to me when they finished. I could not sit at the counter. And so I took the sandwich and went back upstairs to eat it. So it was those instances, I think, that really encouraged me to bring about change. I was never satisfied with the status quo. I didn't know how to do it. And so I actually took it upon myself to commit personal acts of rebellion. I was taking a Spanish class, so a couple of friends of mine went back to the same Kresge's and we started speaking Spanish. I didn't know anything except the El burro es importante in Spain y Mexico. And I was a little better at my pronunciation. So they allowed us to sit, order sodas. And I thought, wow, language can do that. And so that was the last time I did that, first and the last, because I think they caught on. The second act of rebellion was to go into the grocery store and drink out of the refrigerated fountain. And the manager had a stall that was much higher than the grocery store's floor. And he saw me and he ran out. I don't know what he was going to do, but my mother immediately said to me, "Why would you do that? You know better." And she grabbed my arm, but I knew at that moment she was doing that out of love. She was preventing the manager from doing something worse. So the years in Beaumont, Texas, I spent 3.5 years, learned quickly the ways of the city people and learned how to dress appropriately, learned how to use flatware, became friends with kids who were very bright. I knew nothing about the honor roll. And I recall my first quarter, a young lady came up to me uh, and asked, "Did you make the honor roll?" That was the first quarter. I was 12 years old in the ninth grade because in the country, if you tested high, they had no honors courses, no advanced placement. You actually, they just moved you to the next grade. So I made the fourth and fifth in the same year, fourth from September to January, and then January to May, I was in the fifth grade. Same thing happened seventh and eighth. And so seventh grade, I was enrolled from September to January. January, I moved to eighth grade. So they called that making two grades in 1 year. And my only regret is when we moved to Beaumont, I wish my mother had allowed them to place me back. I should have been two grades lower than the ninth, so that would have been the seventh grade. But at any rate, the next quarter, I made the honor roll. I learned what it was, how you get on it, what grades you had to make, and I was never off from the second quarter of my freshman year until I graduated. I observed people I wanted to emulate. Um, I saw a girl going to the library checking out a book. We had no libraries where I grew up. And so I asked her, "How do you do that?" She said, "Oh, you just go in." She just go to the librarian and tell her what you want. Well, I didn't know what I wanted. So the first book I checked out was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn because I saw another girl with that book. Um, and then I became a library assistant, learning the Dewey Decimal System. I was always trying to learn to become because I did not want to be poor. I wanted something better for myself. And so I received a 4-year scholarship to any school, academic scholarship, when I graduated. And I was planning to go to Talladega, Alabama, private school, all Black, but my father died that summer. And so I chose to attend Prairie View because I've been going there every year, either declaiming, that is, give a speech, and uh, it was high competition. And then later in high school, I joined the debate team. And so I was very familiar with Prairie View. And at the last minute, my dad died July 13th, the year after I graduated. And so I made the decision in August to go there because my mom wanted me close by. She did not want me to leave the state. Um, and so college was great. I did well. I protested every rule I thought was unfair for women. We had to wear stockings, and I saw guys without socks. And so I decided that was not appropriate. I took up the case, went to the Dean of Women, was placed on probation, and then eventually taken off. So there were always little things. My niece said to me, who is a year older, she said, "You were always looking for a cause. You always had fight, but you couldn't figure out where to direct it." So after college, I I was married in college. I married a professor, moved up, and and he received fellowship to the University of Kansas to work on his PhD. And I worked and went to school because I learned that men who got their PhDs normally left the wife and married a white woman. So I thought, oh no, you're not going to leave me behind. I'm going to school. So I worked 40 hours a week and I took one class until a couple of years later, and I received an assistantship. And even on campus, I formed a group and we protested the curriculum in my department that only had one Black author, James Baldwin. I protested almost everything we saw that was not right. I marched with the women's group. I marched with the Black students, led many of those marches. Um, and of course, I recall I was placed in the Women's Hall of Fame at KU, but they wiped it clean of all of my activism. And so I said I did not want that award unless they agreed to place all of my activism within the files, and they did. So, but at any rate, I think those early days gave me the kind of strength and resilience that I needed to do the kinds of things I did in Kansas City. Again, forming groups, I got involved with NAACP, later became president, was involved in marches, pickets. I recall, and Cynthia asked the question, what were some of your greatest accomplishments? What do you really feel good about? Two things. In Kansas City, my children were in school, and Narissa had a white friend, and in her English class, they were taking Shakespeare. And Narissa's name is, it's the lady in waiting to Portia in The Merchant of Venice. So she thought, well, I'll ask my teacher, when will we study Shakespeare? And the teacher said to her, oh, you're in a B section, so we don't do Shakespeare. That's only the A group. So I fought that, took it all the way, my husband and I, with a couple of other people. I couldn't get anybody to work with me. I was working on my doctorate then, and we took it to the Office for Civil Rights. And so they negotiated with the school district to get rid of the tracking system. At the time, they had advanced placement A, B, and C. And the principal, who was very conservative, said, I like what you're doing because all of my problems are occurring with those students who are in the C track. So he supported me. Every school board meeting, we had students there speaking to the board. I found the smartest, the brightest Black kids who would appear before the board month after month after month until a resolution was agreed upon. So that is something I was very proud of. The next piece that gave me a lot of joy was picketing Dillard's department store. Uh, they took over a pretty high-end store called Sticks, Bear, and Fuller. And they also wanted to move from an area that was all Black. And the CEO or someone on their staff was interviewed by the Kansas City Star, and he said, "We're going to move the store because we only establish our stores, Dillard's, in communities where people make at least 50,000 a year." Well, we had middle class, upper middle class Blacks live together. So $50,000 was not out of reach to many of the people who lived there. So we boycotted. And I recall one of my greatest, I think, images is Jay, 5 years old, standing on the lower level of Dillard's, passing out flyers, turning people away. They would not shop there when they saw this kid. And he told them why they should not stop there. People were cutting up their credit cards. And in fact, we negotiated many jobs for Black kids. And actually, there were so many, we had a hard time filling those jobs. And then the national NAACP came in and took over our efforts because it was successful. And that was fine because our work was done. Another area I'm really, really proud of, I think if I were to look back on the years I've spent in education, my greatest joy is receiving letters from people whose lives I've touched. Um, I receive them infrequently because most people find me on Facebook and they will say, "You remember me?" And I'll have to say, "Tell me more." And so, over the course of my life, I believe I've touched many people. And my greatest joy is to see them take action to bring about good for everyone and not use it to advance themselves. No matter what I've done in life or accomplished, I'm always bringing someone along. And one of the things I also learned about from my mom, which bode well working in a white world all of my life, my professional life, keep your mouth shut. Don't tell all your business to people because they use it against you. I recall working in Kansas City before I became president of one of their colleges. And I'd been there about 6 years, and I was having dinner with Cynthia. We were out at Tantera at a resort having a conference, and my boss, the chancellor, came up to me and said, "Z, who is that beautiful girl with the big eyes?" And I said, "That's my daughter." And I wasn't very kind about it. And he went, "Oh my God, I didn't know you had a daughter." So that's the level of my keeping to myself, doing a great job. But that was my era. And I still subscribe to that. I think we spend too much time telling people our woes, what's wrong with us. And you don't do that in the workplace. I still believe that. And I know I'm a little old fashioned, but those are the lessons I have learned. Um, the other thing I think is important, you should never be in a position where you're the only one. You should be doing something to bring other people along. I recall, and I'm probably running over my time. I think I am.
No,
One
you're doing
minute, I'll
fine. You're
wrap it
doing
up.
fine.
Um, I recall when I went to Parkland and that's downstate. They have very few, 5% of population in that university community is Black. So I came in knowing that I would bring about change. And I've written a few articles about diversity, inclusion. And when I met with the professional staff, um, the president looked at me and said, "So tell me, how are you going to do that? Are you going to fire white men?" I said, "Well, that's not my initial intent. Through attrition and also through new hires, I believe we can bring about diversity. And I think you're going to be a part of doing that. Let's talk." He just sort of looked at me shocked. The other thing I did was, I think my philosophy, I'll go back a little, has always been, and that's why I'm never shocked at what happens. And I don't get blindsided where you're running around trying to find out who the racists are. I assume if you grow up in America, either you're racist or you harbor racist tendencies. Now, I know that there are people who worked hard to get rid of those, but assuming that philosophy, and I still believe I'm correct, it allowed me freedom to interact with everybody. I never had to watch and say, "Are you, aren't you?" I made certain assumptions. It didn't mean I was unkind. It simply meant I didn't allow that to get in the way of my goals. And I'm still that way today. Unless you get in my way, then I will take action. But unless you do, then my assumption is you have grown up in this country. And unless you really worked at it to get rid of the racism, then I know it's there. And I have to work within that value that you hold. So I've never really had a major problem addressing issues, working in an environment that was very conservative. I was able to do more for Black people, Black faculty, than I did in an urban area where I had Black people on the board. So it's the teachings, you stealth, you include people, always be kind, never let it be about you. And when it becomes personal, you lose your focus. You begin to fight for yourself. But when you're fighting for others, you bring people along with you and you'll reach your goals. So thank you. And Cynthia,
Woo!
I didn't answer all your questions, but I did the best I could.
Nice.
Right on. Thank you
Yes.
so much for that, Zelema, for that. Your powerful walk, uh, not only your own personal story, but being able to affect others in what you've been able to do and sharing with us
Thank
of the
you.
rising and the resilience. That's a good time to kind of segue into our next section of what's going on in Indigenous Ways virtual events. As a lot of you know, we have on Wednesday, the Wisdom Circle, where we're at now, and we just heard the powerful experience and walk in life of how many people Zelema has touched. Next week, we'll be blessed by Evelyn Naranjo, who's also one of the co-founders of Tewa Women United. She's from the San Ildefonso Pueblo. She'll be sharing her wisdom with us next week. And this coming Friday, we're very blessed and honored to have Red Miller Cody, who is an award-winning singer. She was Miss Navajo. She'll be blessing us with her essence in the concert series, which we are very excited to have. All of these are possible because of our sponsors, the First Peoples Nation, the Santa Fe City and Arts Development, the National Endowments of the Arts, the New Mexico Arts, and also sponsoring the Wisdom Circle so we could be here is the New Mexico Humanities Council and also the National Endowment of Humanities. We'd also like to thank each of you who have also donated to support not only our presenters, but also our ASL interpreters, so we have access for all. Below me, you'll see all our social media. So if you're watching through social media at the moment, if you like our page, we'll be very grateful. Above us is our website if you want to get on to the newsletter, which goes out twice a week of who's coming up and what's going on. What we also have, if you are able to donate, I know it's a difficult time at the moment for many of us, but if you're able to, we have PayPal, also the Venmo, and also our postal service, which is the address that you see below us there. A lot of you know that we have also been going up to Black Mountain on the Navajo Nation. That's only been possible because of this platform we've been going through, the Indigenous Ways events, where thanks to you have donated over $25,000, where we've been able to make 4 relief runs. We've got some more exciting projects that we're going to share with you next month. Which is next week, of what's been happening there. So, it's that wonderful time if you're in Zoom. And firstly, you need interpreting services. I'm going to encourage you to pin on Brenda, who's our interpreter at the moment. If she's no longer interpreting, our other interpreter that we're grateful of is Sandra. If you haven't already and you want to, with the amazing words, please turn on your cameras. So whatever you want to share, this is that time at that moment of the talking circle, either checking in or something that really moved you that Zelema may have said, or just even thanking her. If you're in our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those social media, YouTube, if you want to make a comment because you're unable to do that here, or if you're a little bit shy and you're in Zoom and you don't want to turn your camera on, just type something in the chat box and we'll share that. So while you're turning on the cameras and those people who've already got their cameras on, who wants to kick us off? You might need to turn on your microphone as well.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, I wanted to know, Mom, how you were able to get certain benefits for some of the marginalized groups within the colleges that you worked in, like childcare and
Yeah.
domestic partnership rights and domestic
Yeah, I
partnership.
just did it. I never broadcasted. I knew women needed daycare centers. So I just got a group of people who agreed with me. And I used props like little kids, parents would lead their children by the vending machines, the women, while they were in class, and they would have a stack of quarters, keeping them quiet until their moms. So I had the photographer to take pictures, and I shared that with the board. I shared it with faculty in child development. They had been wanting one for a long time. So we built our first one with our own money. It was small. Then I got the state to build a huge one. And then we set up a scholarship. I was on a bank board, and I used all of the money I earned to create a scholarship for single mothers to access that and pay for their child care. And I think I made about 30,000 the first year and put all of that money into the scholarship. The other thing, I knew that the LGBTQ group were trying to get partner benefits. And I heard the faculty who was negotiating say, well, that's a throwaway. We put it in because that group wants it, but we know you all are going to give it to us. So I just told my VP, we're doing it. Just tell him it's going in the contract. I talked to my board. They said, if you want to do it, but don't make a big deal because we'll be run out of our farm communities. So using stealth, again, and I never wanted accolades. You do things because they're the right thing to do. When I set up the first diversity program at Parkland, and we hired in 1 year 6 African-American men, PhDs. Well, not all of them. 3 had the PhD. The Department of Education contacted me, and they wanted me to write up our program. I went, no, because somebody will sue me. I don't need that. So we did what was right. And I think it's not being hesitant about what you believe. I always had Black art, and I remember my board, all of them were farmers, and most of them had a lot of money. The woman on the board walked in and saw all of my Black art, and she said, you know, I respect you. And I thought, why? I mean, I know I'm good, but, and she said, because you display your Black art. She said, most Black people in your position are afraid. Isn't that a telling story? So I don't know. I think Narissa, one last thing, I think it was because I saw as a child, if you wanted to do something, you just do it. And I would get very sick when my mother would buy a medication called 3-6s, and she would give me a teaspoon and I would get very ill. So my dad went to the store. I had a cold and he bought them, and I climbed on the table. I was about 3 or 4, and I got them and poured them out. And my mother was horrified. She spanked me unmercifully. And my dad went back, which was a long walk, and he bought more. I did the same thing. And my mother didn't spank me. She just said, I don't know what I'm going to do with her. So I kind of started seeing that if it's something you really believe, you ought to just do it, deal with the consequences. The spanking would end, but I didn't have to get sick taking the medication. So I think early years are very important. And yeah, we were the first college, I believe, in Illinois to offer partner benefits. And there was no big thing said about it because we put it in the contract and the board approved the contract collectively. Nothing was pulled out. Although the board saw it, they knew that if it were highlighted, they too would have somewhat of a problem. So thank you for that question.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I just want to say thank you very much for giving us a good lesson in protesting with such elegance by learning more than your instructors and reading more books and saying, you know what, I'll show you by getting more of an education than the guy that was teaching it. That's the way I see you, and you're my star, Zelema, for doing that. And I want to say one last thing. Thank you very much for your donation to Indigenous Ways. You
Oh,
raised your daughter, Narissa, right, because both of you have been our special guests of amazing honor, and both of you have donated your honorarium back into the Wisdom Circle. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and
oh,
thank
sure.
you. We love
Thank
you, and your
you.
family is so beautiful, and I can
Thank
see
you.
the seeds that you sprouted all around the screen, and you know what? You are all beautiful. Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you very much, Tosh.
Thank you,
And
Tosh.
thank the interpreters. I didn't do that. They were
Doesn't get
great.
any better than them. Doesn't get any better than Chandra and Brenda. I made sure you got the best interpreters on planet Earth.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else would like to share or ask questions to Zelema? Yeah, Christina. Oh, hang on, Christina. The interpreter's finding you. Okay.
Wow, what an awesome story.
Thank you.
You are fierce in your rebelness.
Well, thank you.
Like the activist from Mexico, the farmer. Looking at you, it's really impactful to me. She was fierce as well. Right now, I am involved in something in Jersey City, in interpreter clarifying, one moment. She can't see me and I can't get the clarification.
Newark City.
Newark?
Mm-hmm.
New York City.
New York. She's signing with one hand, so I'm struggling here. New York City. So I'm holding the phone with the other hand. I apologize for that. I'm using the phone with one hand. And so I'm here at home at Terrace, the 22nd floor. And I just wanted to give you a brief look at what I'm looking at when I'm watching you. And that's the World Trade Center straight ahead. That's lower end of New York, Manhattan.
Wow.
Again, that tiny figure there is the World Trade Center. So I'm looking at all of this from the 22nd floor. It's absolutely beautiful. And I just wanted to share that here while I'm here in New York City. Thank you so much for your fierce rebelliousness. And it makes me feel inspired and it makes me feel stronger. And thank you, interpreters. You were awesome.
Thank you, Christina.
This is Tosh. I second that, Christina. Everything you said, and we want to come visit you in New York City.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to share some words or questions with Zelema while we have her on?
I should be here.
I just wanted to thank you, Mom. You did an amazing job. And, you know, Narissa and I grew up with all of your stories, and you have about another, I don't know, 5 hours of stories at least. So there were some of my favorites you didn't get to, but but I just want to thank you. It was wonderful to hear you, and I learned new things that I think are going to help me that you've never said to me. So thank you. I just wanted to give you props. Thanks so much for doing such a great job.
That was
Thank
great.
you, Cynthia.
Yeah, I learned some new stories too. There are a few that I didn't know.
You all left home early.
So while people are kind of getting over their shyness in Zoom, we've only got a few minutes left, but I do want to share some things in social media. Lithia Paul from Texas says, I love how she sees something and goes after it to conquer it. She also says how awesome and thank you for touching her. We've got Leslie Burnett, who also says thank you so much for what you shared. Okay, back
Thank
in
you.
Zoom, if there's anyone just to unmute a
Hey,
question or
hi,
comment.
Dr. Z. This is Gwen.
Hi, Gwen. How are
Hi-
you?
Good, good. I could sit at your feet and listen to your stories all day. I've been hearing them through your daughter, Cynthia and Narissa. It's kind of secondhand, but to actually hear you in this virtual setting is just very, I mean, you
Yeah.
it just seems to flow out of you, and it is very inspiring. I thought it was
Thank
particularly
you.
interesting point that you made about you assumed that when you were working that you assumed that people that grew up in America, there was some element of racism, and you work within that um, assumption. Is that something that you kind of came up with, or you just observed, or it just kind of
I think I
was an
just
aha
came up
moment?
with it
Yeah.
because, yeah, I grew up in an all Black community, um, and I think the first time I realized it, uh, when I went to KU, I enrolled as a grad student in the School of Education. I was placed on probation, although I had a pretty high average from college. And they told me it was because I graduated from a Black college. And they didn't know that's where the Black minds were. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
had the president was from Harvard. They couldn't get jobs anywhere else. So we were, I won't say a graveyard like the post office, but we were a garden of people who had accomplished a lot. So I never said a word. I never fought it. And they told me I had to take statistics as my first course, which weeds everybody out. And we had these huge calculators. They were humongous. And I would go up on Saturday and work for hours. And there was a white guy who taught math at the local high school, and he was helping me. So we'd work together. He was really a neat guy. And so the first test, I got an A and he got a C. And so he asked me, what did you earn? I didn't know he had gotten a C. And I showed it to him with great pride. And he said, oh, and he never showed up again to work on Saturday with me. And I thought, oh, well, that could have happened with anybody. And I had courses where the professor would tell jokes about Southern Europeans, the Polish, and I didn't know much. Everybody was white to me. And I started reading and talking to people, and they said, yeah, you know, that happens. So I announced in class one day that I could not tolerate that anymore. And we were being educated to teach and train and for classmates to engage in laughter as the instructor told Polish jokes. I found that unacceptable. And the professor was a Princeton graduate. He said, okay, I got 8 out of the course. One of the things I learned, I always tell my students, I've never found a teacher to give me a poor grade because I disagreed. Respectfully, I wrote papers refuting what they said. I didn't call them a bunch of racists. I did that in my work. And that's what I taught my students when they would come to me and say, oh, he's a racist or she's a racist. And I said, what are you going to do about it? You can't change him. You need to do your work. Let's see how we can approach what he or she said. And I would work with them. I remember giving a professor an article in the Harvard Educational Review. I was taking a psychology course, and he was presenting the works of Arthur Jensen, whose work turned out to be faulty, and it was 80% of intelligence is inherited, and only 20% is attributable to the environment. Well, I found materials that refuted him. So I sent it to him. He sent me a note back on the copied paper I gave him. I don't read secondary sources, so I went and bought the book. Now I'm a grad student, and I gave him the book. That was the way I fought. And when he saw me, I got A out of the course. When he saw me on campus, I came back after receiving my master's. He said, what are you doing here? And I said, Dr. Hahn, I'm working on my doctorate. He said, I knew you would do that. Just walked off. But everything he said, Black people were inferior. I was the only Black in class out of about 100 students. And I remember him saying, they had done a test on motor skills and certain races were better. And I sat on the front and he said, so what do you all think? I guess that's a Black person, motor skills. You haven't given us anything else. He said, no, in fact, you're wrong. It's the Chinese. So I thought, oops, it was always that. And so I didn't speak out anymore. I learned to fight him by writing and giving him books and refuting what he said. I did that in every class. Educational history, I wrote about Black people. What were Black people doing during the Industrial Revolution? What was education like for us? So I graduated. The master's was with honors, and they only gave one of those a year out of the entire School of Education. So I fought, but I fought where it would hurt and enlighten. I didn't call people a bunch of racists and you're discriminating against me. They knew they were, I didn't have to tell them. So, but anyway, I won't be so long. I'm sorry. I just keep going on and on.
I can
Thank
listen
you
to
all
it.
very
Apologies,
much.
no
Thank you,
apologies. We
That's
can
so
listen
beautiful.
to you
Thank you
all
for
night
that,
long,
Zelema.
Zelema.
Yeah.
Dr.
Just
Zelema.
before we click off, I know there's some people that may have wanted to share in Zoom. Is there anyone that wants to say anything before we clip off tonight?
Burning
camera.
desires.
Okay, Courtney. And
I just
then
want to say, Dr. Harris, I love you. Thank you for sharing the stories. You've always been an inspiration to me, and you've guided me and taught me so many lessons. So I just had to say it's great to see you. It's great to hear you. Love you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. You're my favorite.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you for
Latina,
coming.
I saw you take your mic off. Did you want to say some closing words?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of echo the same. Just thank you for being a constant source of inspiration and reminding us that it is always better to ask for forgiveness than permission when you know the right thing is the right thing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Latina. I appreciate it.
Right on. Faith, did you want to say anything before we head out? And then James, I'm going to get you to close us out. Faith, did you want to say anything?
Hi, great to see you. I typed it and I was just saying so much wisdom, and everything you had to say was just so resonant. I've been hearing a lot. I didn't realize about education tonight, and it's kind of bringing up a lot of things for me and different thoughts of how I can make my impact in that realm. So I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in.
And Zelema, I'd like to say,
Oh, sorry. James, just before you go, Celestine, did you want to say something just before James?
I do.
Yeah, please.
I can't keep my camera on, but I wanted to thank Jay for reaching out and letting me know that his mom was going to be speaking. I'm a very good friend of Nevada's, and I just really hate that I missed it. I can't even keep my camera on, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to go back and listen to it. But I see your girls, and it's just always a pleasure to be around your family.
Thank you.
Hey, Miss Harris, this is Leon. I caught in on the end. I'm actually driving home. How you doing? I couldn't keep my camera on because I'm driving home. I just turned it on real quick, but always a pleasure to see you. Love you.
It's good to see you.
Enjoyed it.
Keep us safe.
I will.
Okay.
Stacey, you've got your mic off. Did you want to say anything?
Hi, Leon.
Yes. Zelema, this is Stacy.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi. This was
Dr. Harris.
This was wonderful. I learned so much. I've known you my whole life, which has been such an honor and a pleasure. And I have such admiration and love for you. I learned so much, so many stories I had never heard. I could have listened for 5 more hours to all of your stories.
Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom, your encouragement, and I just feel so inspired to listen to you today.
That really makes me feel so good. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for weighing up and your beautiful words. And James, we're going to let you have the last words.
You're muted, Jay.
Not now. I got it. Hey, all right. Yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. This was excellent. It's good for me. You're my mama, and I've heard most of this, or a lot, but it's a great refresher. And yeah, just very, very inspirational. And I hope that, or my hope is that we can all take this energy right now while we're out in the world, especially with all this going on and what happened, yesterday and for months and years and centuries. So yeah, so thank you. And yeah, and let's all just leave with the same spirit and energy that we just got.
Thank you for making me presentable for your friends.
Thank you, Mom. Great. It was wonderful.
Right on, Jay. On that note, I do want to say something that Christina gave the word fierce. And it's not only fierce, there's only one way to do it, and that's to do it. And we just got a slither of an extraordinary woman, a courageous woman who, through education, through her life, made changes, not only to herself, her extraordinary family who are here, and also the amazing people that she has touched in her journey. So bringing this into this format for people to take away, if you only saw a little bit of this, you can get the recording of this at the website IndigenousWays.org. Please share that out. I haven't talked to Tash about this, but I know she'll agree. Zelema, we'd love to have you back, and we'll organize that. We know you won't need prompting by your daughter or daughters or son, but you have so much to share. And it's not only what you have to share, it's actually what you've done. And it's what
Will
you've
you come
done and
back, please,
making
Zelema?
and making
Sure.
differences to
Love
people's
to.
lives. So on that note, thank you to our interpreters. But on that note, please, everyone, let's give Dr. Zelema Harris just an extraordinary thank you, yeehaw, and blessing all of us tonight with her wisdom.
Thank you.
And Elena, you have done a fine job tonight. I am very proud of you. You rocked it tonight there.
Thank you. So on that note, we'll look forward to seeing you on Friday with the beautiful Radmilla Cody, who will be blessing us in the Navajo way. Please stay tuned when we have this extraordinary woman back named Dr. Zelema Harris. So with that, let's give her up one more time. Be safe, everyone. Thank you so much, Zelema. We love you. We love you. We love you.